First, remember the chant. So, car, toa. Now we're moving on to actually doing the calculations, calculating a side of the triangle that is unknown. First thing you always do, label your triangle. So label the hypotenuse. Remember the opposite is always opposite the angle that you're working with, and the other one is adjacent to the angle that you're working with, so that's the adjacent. Next thing you ask yourself, in my calculation, which of these sides do I not need? Which side will I not be working with? Well, you know that the adjacent is 10 centimetres and you're looking for the opposite. So the side you won't need is the hypotenuse. So we can cross that out. That means we can disregard any of the formula triangles that have an H for hypotenuse. So we can cross those out, and we're using toa. We're left with the tan. Now you have one triangle, you ask yourself, which side do I need to find? You're looking for x, and that's the opposite. In your formula triangle, you cover the one you're looking for, and the other two values will help you to find that. Because you have two values at the bottom of the triangle, they're beside each other, you're multiplying. In your calculator, you will type in the tan, it'll open a bracket, you'll put in 35 for the angle and close the bracket, and then you'll multiply it by the length of the adjacent, which is 10, and that will give you the length of the opposite side. In your calculator, you should have 7.002, etc. You've been asked to round it to the nearest integer, that's the nearest whole number. So the length of the opposite side is 7 centimetres. Here's a similar one for you to try. We're being asked to calculate the length of x and round your answer to the nearest integer. Pause the video, press play when you're ready. First, label your triangle. Hypotenuse, the opposite, and the adjacent. Now ask yourself, which side am I not working with? Which side isn't needed in my calculation? You've been given the adjacent, and you're looking for the opposite, so you don't need the hypotenuse. Once again, we can get rid of those first two triangles, and you're left with the tan, toa. Now you're left with one triangle. Establish which of those sides you don't know, but is the one that you're looking for. And that's the opposite, x. So you cover that up, and again you have a multiplication. You have the two values at the bottom, which you multiply together. In your calculator, the tan of the angle, which is 52 degrees, remember to close that bracket, and you're multiplying that by the length of the adjacent, which is 22. In your calculator you should have 28.1587 and so on. You've been asked to round to the nearest integer, which is the nearest whole number, and that's 28 centimetres. Have a look at this one. Calculate the length of x, round your answer to one decimal place. Once again, label the triangle. Hypotenuse, opposite, and the x is the adjacent. Which is the side we don't need? And that's the opposite. So we can get rid of any of the formula triangles that have O for opposite. And we're left with the cos. Now we have that one triangle. What's the value we're trying to find? Which side are we calculating? We know the hypotenuse, so we're calculating the length of the adjacent. So we're going to cover up the A. Again, you've got a multiplication, the two values at the bottom. In your calculator, this time it's the cos of the angle, which is 25 degrees, and you're multiplying that by the length of the hypotenuse, which is 12 centimetres, and in your calculator you should have 10.87569 and so on. You've been asked to round to one decimal place. Because after the decimal point you've got 87, that decimal will become 9. 10.9 centimetres. And here's a similar one for you to try. Calculate the length of x, round your answer to 1 decimal place. Pause the video, press play when you're ready. Label the triangle: hypotenuse, opposite, adjacent. Which side isn't needed? That's the opposite, so we're going to get rid of so and toa. We'll be using the cos key on the calculator. The side we need to find is the adjacent, so cover that up. And you're going to multiply the cos of the angle by the length of the hypotenuse. In your calculator, cos, bracket 68, close the bracket. Multiply by the hypotenuse, which is 30. In your calculator, you should have 11.2381. You've been asked to round that to 1 decimal place, so that's 11.2 centimetres. For this one, when you get to the formula triangles, you'll need to do something a bit different. I've labelled the triangle already. Which side isn't needed? I know the opposite. I'm looking for the hypotenuse, so I get rid of the adjacent. So this time, I get rid of car and toa. I'm not using the cos and I'm not using the tan. I'm using the sine key. Which side do I need to find? Well, x is the hypotenuse. So I'm covering the hypotenuse. And you'll notice this time I have a division. It's the opposite divided by the sine of the angle, because the opposite is above the sine in the triangle. In my calculator, I will type in 14 divided by the sine, 50, close the bracket, equals, and that's 18.2757. I've been asked to round the answer to 2 decimal places. So that's going to be 18.28 centimetres. Here's one the same as that for you to try. Pause the video, press play when you're ready. The triangle is labelled. Which side isn't needed? We have the opposite. We're looking for the hypotenuse, so we can get rid of the adjacent. And we're left with the sine key. Which side do we need to find the value of? We're looking for the value of the hypotenuse, so we cover that up. Now in the calculator, we need to put in the opposite and divide it by the sine of the angle. So that's 7 is the opposite, divided by the sine of 28. That's 14.9103. And you've been asked to round your answer to 2 decimal places. So that's 14.91 centimetres. In the next video, they're going to get a bit harder.